Should see the light there.
I see the recorder.
Recording. Okay, good. Hello, I'm Tony. Welcome back. This is the second video in our series. Our first video, of course, we talked about the disease process, and we talked about symptoms and treatment options and so forth. Now we wanted to move forward with some practical matters that folks in early recovery oftentimes deal with and have trouble with. And today I'm here with Kia. Kia is a certified financial counselor.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And of course we don't have time to talk at great length about managing our money. That's what we're going to talk about today, managing our money and so forth. It can be a pretty lengthy topic, so we're going to keep it fairly short and brief. All of the links and so forth and references that we speak to today, some of which are behind us, but others that we mention will be listed on the blog so that you can link to those if you choose to. So we'll just get right into it. So the reason that I wanted to talk about money, okay, balancing our budgets and things like that, and dealing with creditors, is that many of us who are in recovery, those first few weeks and months as we get back into the workforce and we start to make a little bit of money, many of us don't have the skills that we need to manage even just a little bit of money. Even if you're just making $100 a week or $80 a week or something like that, paying your bills on time and dealing with creditors and prioritizing what we do, what we should do with our money. That's a big deal. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that today, in your opinion. So, as a financial counselor,
Yes.
what would you recommend for folks who are just getting back into the workforce and haven't for years, maybe in some cases, had any real money to spend on themselves or to spend on consumer products and things like that, maybe buy a car or rent a little apartment or something like that. What kind of tips could you offer folks?
Just coming back into the workforce, I'm assuming that dealing in this circumstance that they may not be in the highest paid position. They might be dealing on cash on hand every day, and that can be very difficult with managing. So the first thing that any person, recovery or not, you need to plan, to take a point in your week or your day to think about what your money needs to do, what the job is for your money. And then when you do that, you can put it in quadrants on a piece of paper. So I need this amount of money to get to work. On a piece of paper, you can write it down. If it's $1 a day on the bus and you have to go to work 3 days, then it's 3 days at $1 a day, and that's my transportation money. And then I go to my food money and my housing money. We have to keep it very basic.
Yeah.
And you can do that monthly or we can do it weekly. But I would assume that if we're getting paid day by day, that the best would be weekly. At the end of the week or the beginning of the week, depending on how you feel, how you want to take control of that. Mm-hmm. And then when you know the amount, let's say we figured out that I'm going to need $50 to live through the week. And then I figure out that at the end of the week, I'll have $60 left over. So at that point in time, we know how much money has to go to the bank, and we know what's left over. So our leftovers, we always have to spend a little on ourselves. Always spend a little on yourself. Yes, everybody needs a reward.
That's right.
Right? When we were in kindergarten, we got gold stars.
Yes.
And we were happy because that was our reward.
Sure.
So working, that could be possibly your reward. It could be a Sunday. It could be a magazine. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend a huge amount of money. But I would definitely say, please, please don't neglect yourself. Because when you neglect yourself is when you get to the point of frustration. And then whatever you have is gone. Because now you have to blow everything to feel better.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's no fun to see all your money going towards your bills. I mean, as necessary as that is for all of us, we do need to feel good. We need to feel like whatever it is that we're doing for a living is benefiting us personally, in some way or another, even if it's a cup of coffee or something like that, or a day at the park, or whatever the case might be, something that might cost a little bit of money. It's nice to, yeah.
But that has to fit into the budget. Some of that money depending on your living situation. If you're living with family, or you're living in transient, or I really don't know any other location you could live. You could be living on your own, but you still need to put a little bit of that away for the rainy day.
That's right.
So along with rewarding ourselves, the rainy day fund too is a reward. It's a reward, so when things go bad, you're not frustrated. You don't have to ask, too many people for money. You don't have to feel overwhelmed. So the rainy day fund is also a reward for maybe bad situations. I know that sounds kind of weird, but if you get laid off and you need to pay your bills,
Sure.
the rainy day fund comes into effect. So now you can feel a little sigh of relief. I know I call it a reward. I say a reward because that's just I guess I don't know what to say, like a break.
Yeah.
Or just so you don't have to run around trying to figure it out, or have the situation where you're out on the street.
Sure. Well, it's always nice to feel, at least for me, knowing that I have a little rainy day fund. It gives me a greater sense of control, I know that, and it does give me some peace of mind, and I think for most folks that tends to be the case. There's a sense of empowerment that comes from taking more control of our finances and putting a little bit of money back and things of this nature, and it's not so much about the thing itself. It's not so much about the money itself that we're saving. It's the skill. It's the character that's required to get to that point to do those things. That's really the lesson that we all have to learn. Having a few bucks in the bank is, quite frankly, is kind of irrelevant. But having the discipline and the self-awareness to do things like that and to accomplish things like that is really what, I liken it to sometimes to kids. When you teach them a skill, they don't really understand that skill, it transcends just that particular context or that particular day or event or something like that. That whatever it is that we're learning is transferred to other areas of our life, whether it's work or relationships or being honest with our landlords or whatever the case might be. These are valuable skills, and
it's like a gold star.
Sure, absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it's a gold star for your self-esteem.
Sure.
And then for confidence, and it gives a little freedom.
Yeah,
a little
absolutely.
freedom to know that, okay, if it happens, I can somewhat control.
Yeah.
You can't control the whole thing, but I control a little bit. I can make sure that the lights are still on. I can make sure that we still have food. That little bit of control is really gratifying.
Yeah.
Having that.
Now, we were speaking earlier, so how do folks access professionals like yourself? So they're in their local community and they're struggling and they don't know where else to turn. Now, I know that a lot of local libraries, you can go to your local library and you can, most local libraries will have some sort of money class or financial ed class or something like that that's usually free. There's also some resources now, again, here on the board, and I'll just speak to them quickly. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling, there's some great resources on there, and there's a link on there. I believe it's that particular website, the mymoney.gov, and that's not listed here, but I'll put a link to that website as well. That's the U.S. government's website, and it's all about planning to buy a home, balancing your checkbook. There's some great resources on there. Investing, if that's your thing, and so again, I'll put all of those up. And then I also found a fair amount of information about connecting and recommendations to connect with folks like yourself, certified credit counselors that can help people with their budgets and so forth.
Yeah, we're really all over the spectrum. Along with my certification, we have housing people that do HUD. So we're in the local governments there to help people. We're in the banks as well.
Okay.
So there are a lot of places that we are. You just have to kind of ask if they have one on staff.
Okay. And in many instances, your services are free, right? Or at a very low rate. Kind of depends on
where you find us.
Yeah,
where you find us, because we're all over. Crazy. We're in hospitals.
Okay.
Yes. So we help the patients figure out kind of how can you afford to pay for procedures or anything like that. So we're all over. It just depends on what setting you find us, really, on how much. If you find us in a .org situation, we're usually very low fee or no fee.
Okay.
Right. So you have HUD. We have HUD counselors that are financial counselors. They can be free, depending on how you went through them, like through social services. So depending how you come upon us is really can set the bar on our pay.
Now, in your experience, you've been doing this gathering for
for a bit,
a number of years. In your experience, do you feel that people benefit from using professionals like yourself versus like when I was getting sober, of course, I didn't know who to ask, and that's part of why we're doing this, is hopefully to get a little bit of information out to folks. Who do I ask? Who do I connect with? Because the folks in the rooms of AA, they didn't teach me any of this stuff. They didn't mention, hey Tony, how are you balancing your checkbook? Do you even have a checkbook? Do you have a bank account? Because that requires some effort. I don't know that banks just give bank accounts to anyone these days. You have to have there are certain criteria, I think, that have to be met. So I didn't even know what questions to ask or who to ask. And no one was asking me, hey, where are you at with these things?
Well, just like sobriety, finance is very sensitive to people.
Sure.
So as I have experience teaching and trying to educate, it's kind of hard really to ask someone how they're doing financially, because that is such a personal situation. As a counselor, a financial counselor working in the position that I am now, it is still very difficult when people have a regular job, making decent money, for them to come and talk. It's very, very personal.
Yeah.
Very personal.
Okay. Well, that's very true, and hopefully we just want to bring some of that out into the light, because the truth for folks like me anyway, is that financial instability and insecurity and doubt and worry and fear and those types of things really can be triggers for folks, and I just want people to recognize that and be aware that wherever you are with managing your money and your budgeting and managing your income and your spending, consumer spending and so forth, that you be honest with that. We all need to be honest about that. We need to be honest with our families, our spouses, if we have spouses and so forth, and because these things can lead to relapse, and for addicts, that's kind of like a death sentence.
Well, to this point, I would just like everyone to think about the plan and, like you said, be honest. So if you're a spender because it's in your hand, it shouldn't be in your hand.
Yes.
But if you just need just a little bit to get you through the day, we always have the envelope system where
Yeah.
you put the rest away and you keep what you need that day, and that kind of keeps people honest. So there are a lot of ways that people can do that. It's just that they have to have a plan. I can never say it enough, is as long as you have a plan, then you know what direction you're going in. I hate to hear people just ramble on about money and not have a direction, because then they don't know if they're going the right way.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well, thank you so very much. And again, some of those resources, just a couple others. The National Foundation on Credit Counseling, I may have mentioned that one. And then the moneymanagement.org, another great resource where you can get education and budgeting tips and various other things. And then Utah State University actually has, they're a little dated, they're about 10 years old, but they're still very useful and practical. They're free online courses that folks can download and use. You can do that at your local library, or if you have access to some technology, you can jump on a computer and take those classes. So I don't know that we need to share very much more. I think we've covered quite a bit, the important stuff, and it's really about connecting with folks that can help you if you're struggling, or if you don't know how to proceed with your own budgeting. And I want to thank you very much for being here, taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and share your experience. And
I wish I could say, I wish we had more time.
Sure.
Because I would definitely love to talk about credit and getting out of debt.
Yeah.
So if you have another one, definitely.
Yeah.
I would love to do that, because debt is a different plan that has
Yeah.
a script.
Yeah, it requires, well, an entirely different plan, right, getting out of debt. And that's a big deal. And so that raises a good point, is that it's priority in early recovery. A lot of folks have debt. That's just the reality of it. And it's very easy to get sucked into the need to deal with that immediately, right away. And it can be extremely overwhelming and stressful, and a lot of times creditors can be somewhat unforgiving, right? And they can put pressure on people that can add stress and anxiety that can lead to trigger and relapse. And
Yes.
so
That happens with everyone.
Yeah.
I always tell them, unplug your phone.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Just unplug your phone if it gets that bad, and
Yeah.
you need a moment of peace.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come get you for unplugging your phone or turning your phone off for a minute.
But the priority, so when you mention that, I would what I think about is the priority, as far as I'm concerned, would be taking care of your immediate needs. You know, your food and your lights and your rent and your kids' diapers. You know, if you've got limited funds, take care of what you have to survive. And then move towards, okay, now I need to chunk out $10 a week to pay my creditors. And that can always be managed.
Yes,
Right?
it's a huge monster. If you're not really ready for it, the debt isn't going anywhere.
No.
It is not.
And it just accrues interest.
It does, but at some point in time, you're going to have to face it. But I would rather someone face it when they are ready.
Yeah.
When they're ready. Because I tell people, you don't want anybody to sell you something that you can't pay for. So when you're ready to deal with the debt, that means having a script, knowing how much you can afford, because the job of the person on the other end is trying to get you to pay as much as they can.
Yeah.
Your job is to pay as much as you can, not what they can, but what you can without breaking the bank,
Sure.
without taking food out of your children's mouths, making sure that you can pay all your bills.
Yeah.
So that, if you have another segment, is definitely a different situation where you have to sit down and write out and kind of know, like, $10 is all that I can afford. If $10 is all you can afford, regardless how long he screams on the phone, $10 is all that you can afford.
Yeah, and then for some folks, bankruptcy, is a viable option and choice for folks, and people like you can counsel individuals on when that's appropriate. If they have an excessive amount of debt and they just can't seem to work out a plan with people, maybe their creditors are just too resistant to making small payments, and
unplug the phone.
Yeah.
Give yourself a minute, because when we get emotional, we get trapped into it,
Yeah.
then we start agreeing to things that we can't possibly do.
That's right.
And then that gets the other person or the other side, you said.
Sure.
So definitely it's all about a plan first.
Yeah.
And being true to yourself, being true to that number.
Yeah, and it's so important, I mean, when you mention stress, because for folks in recovery, that's something that we have to stay away from in the beginning. It really is important to manage that. I mean, that's even more important. I mean, they kind of lead to one another. Your finances lead to stress, and stress will, or lack of stress can help you better manage your money. So it's this revolving door. It's the circle that we get stuck in, and so it's so important to manage the stress that we experience in the first few months, 6 months, even a year of recovery, until we get a thicker skin, until we learn how to talk to people and listen to people and deal with people and learn how to say no. That's a skill in and of itself. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, you just truly have to be honest with yourself. And looking at the $10 isn't going to make it a $20 bill. It's still going to be the $20 bill, and being honest to that number.
Sure.
That's really it. And definitely, if you, like I said, if you have another one, that's definitely a different script and a different road, but it is a road.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we want to thank the viewer. I thank Kia, and tune in for here in a few weeks. We'll have another video following this one, and again, it will be another area that can be problematic for people in recovery. So tune in for that, and thanks again. All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, it was.